Welcome to Total Leadership TV. Today we're speaking with Joseph Ansanelli, who is a serial entrepreneur and a graduate of the Wharton School, class of 1992. Welcome, Joseph. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's get right into your story. It's February 2009. You graduated from the Wharton School, which is where we're sitting right now, 17 years ago or so. Can you give us a brief kind of recap of how you got from there to here?
Sure. I graduated in 92 and actually started my first software company while I was here with some folks from the engineering school. We sold that to Apple. And that really started my career as an entrepreneur. It got me very excited about it. Spent some time working at Apple. I worked on a Newton, which was a handheld device, which was a colossal failure. Learned a lot in that process. Worked at Macromedia and did more entrepreneurial activities inside of Macromedia, starting a couple of businesses. Left there and started my own company called Connectify in 1997 in the electronic direct marketing space. How to leverage the power of email to connect with people's customers. Customers were like Williams-Sonoma and eBay and whatnot. We merged that with another private company, took it public in 1999, went through the whole dot-com boom and bust. And then in 2001, started my most recent company called Vontu, which is an information security company that we grew from 3 of us and 3 founders working in the basement to 200 people and 50 million in revenue. That was acquired by Symantec in November of 2007. And I spent the last year at Symantec running and growing that business and left recently. And now I'm here.
So what are you doing these days, James?
I'm relaxing and enjoying myself a little bit, but also I'm working with a nonprofit in San Francisco around homelessness, as well as getting pretty involved here at the Wharton School, and then working with a couple of early stage companies as an advisor and an investor and a coach to young CEOs who are maybe the first time starting a company and looking for someone to be a good a coach or a mentor to help them through some of the trials and tribulations of startup life.
So you're investing your time now in sharing some of the lessons of your own experience with people who are just starting out.
Right.
Well, let's go to that then. As you think about some of the important lessons that you've learned about starting a new company, particularly from the perspective of the whole person, which is, of course, the main emphasis of total leadership. How do you integrate the different pieces of your life for mutual benefit? One of the things that you've said in prior conversations is that there's this myth that you've got to be 100% committed to the company, to the work itself, in order to be successful. So is that a myth, or is it reality? What's your take on that? And what do you tell the people who you advise about that?
Starting a company is one of the hardest things you can do. So I don't want to belittle the amount of work and energy, and I mean it's really, really hard, and it's very scary actually. I mean, you are starting something from nothing, and
what's the scary part?
Well, there's a lot of scary parts. I mean, there's a fear of failure. I mean, that's one of the biggest fears I think that people have, which stops them from ever starting. And then when you're in it, I'll tell you, one of the most scary moments is always when we get to a certain size and we have our first company event, for example, and you start to meet people's spouses, and you meet their kids. You feel this huge responsibility as a CEO of this company that your decisions you make affect a lot of people's lives. That can be really scary. And as a result, and then you also have investors. You went to these people and you raise millions of dollars from them, and you feel an obligation to be successful, make the company successful, give them back the money in return a lot more. And so there's a lot of pressure on you. And so there's a tendency for people to just work. And
because of the sense of obligation, or is it the pure joy of it, or you had nothing else going on in your life at the time, or what?
I'm sure it's a combination of a bunch of things. I'm sure it is a combination of the type of people that start companies are a little bit type A, and they tend to work really hard, and they tend to be workaholics. I think it's a desire to get ahead and to work hard and to get ahead of your competitors and win. And there's a sense that to win, you need to put in lots of hours. And to be honest, that's what I did for the first 10 years after I left Wharton. I mean, all of the things that I was doing, I was working all the time. But the problem was, if you think about the 4 spheres of someone's life, I mean, my 4 spheres were work, 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 and work. And
that's not 4, Joseph. That's 1.
One that basically, if you took them all over.
I see.
And as a result, I wasn't happy personally, nor was I healthy, and I probably wasn't actually ultimately as successful in my work life as a result. Because when you're not, when you're in a startup, it is something where you're constantly dealing with new challenges every single day. And I'm a big believer that you need to be prepared for the unexpected things to happen. And if you're mentally not ready because you're overworked and you're too tired and you can't deal with the challenges that's going to happen one day, you're not going to be as successful. You're not going to be, sort of on top of your game. You're not going to be able to deal with it. I mean, I like to compare a startup. I'll typically say a marathon, but I've never actually run a marathon. I'm a cyclist, so I sort of compare things more to the Tour de France, which is probably a better example, which is being in a startup and your life is much like the tour. There's ups and there's downs. You have mountain stages, you have descents, you have sprints, you have time trials. And you have to think about your life, especially if you're in a startup, as a marathon or as trying to do a tour where you have to have the right plan to start with, and second, you have to have the right pace so you can finish. And if you can't get to the end, and the way you win is by having more energy than the next guy, you have to make sure you set that right pace. Because if you set the right pace and you're thinking about doing this for 10 years, that's the only way you can successfully continue to go through it and be fresh and ready and always able to deal with the challenges that are going to happen every single day.
So what happened? 10 years, you're burning 100% on the work engines. Did something change that caused you to rethink the mix of the different parts of your life so that others emerged as more important than they had been?
Yeah. March 31st, 2002, almost 10 years to when I graduated. Sunday morning, Easter morning, don't ask me why I was not at church. I was out riding my bike.
I wasn't going to ask, but okay.
I'm out riding my bike, going downhill, and I come around a corner a little too fast. The road was wet. Bike slides out from underneath me, and I go into a barricade, a 4x4 wood post of the barricade at 25 miles an hour, square in my back. Shatter a vertebrae, break 3 ribs, puncture a lung. And I ended up, I was in the hospital, I was in the ICU for a couple of days. And when you're faced with, for me, the thing that became important to me was not my work. It was about whether I could walk. And that really changes your perspective on things, because in the face of potentially a very debilitating accident, thank goodness I was okay, or death, I think that it starts to, it gets rid of all the other things that you think about or you think that might be important. All the external expectations you think people have of you, they disappear. And you have a lot of time to think about what really matters to you. What matters in your work, what matters in your personal life, what matters in your relationships, in your family, what about the community that you live in. And that event really got me to stop and think about, okay, what do I want my next 10 years to be like? And
so you recommend having a catastrophic accident to successful entrepreneurs at the age of 32 or so?
It's probably not a great strategy, but hopefully people can learn lessons from mistakes that people make. I wouldn't suggest that people do that. But if you stop to think about what if your life dramatically changed, would you do things differently today? It's an interesting test.
For sure, but would you have gotten to that point of stepping back and taking a fresh look had this not happened? I mean, I guess it's impossible to know, but my guess is that you might not have. And what would have been the consequences of going along the path you were on?
I mean, I probably wouldn't have. And I wouldn't have probably because, there's not a lot of people that teach you otherwise, or that are good role models and mentors, or to tell you the way to think about it. And if I hadn't made those changes, I'm sure I would have been doing more of the same. and I would weigh 30 pounds more than I do now, and you know, be in an unsuccessful relationship. I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be contributing outside of work to anything else, and I mean, I just wouldn't be as happy as I am, and I probably would not have been as successful. When I think about
From a business point of view.
Absolutely.
Why do you say that? Because you had been quite successful, no?
I've been fairly successful, but Vontu was a very different level of success.
So Vontu came after the accident.
Literally, we were weeks away from raising money when I had the accident. And I actually gave the first venture capital pitch from the couch in my house to raise money because I couldn't drive. And so when we started, we sat down and we said, how do we want to build this company? And the three of us said we wanted to make sure that we build a culture where we think about people's whole life. We used to call them corporate athletes. We wanted people that could actually figure out how to, you know, train and prepare and plan and optimize all the different areas in their life. And it also, as we continued to go through and we managed people, we would try to think about how do we think about all the spheres that they have in their lives. Because if you can help them optimize those other things, I believe that they will be more effective doing their jobs and more happy. And if they're happier workers, I think they're going to do a better job for you as well. And so, you know, I don't know if I would have been as successful because I wouldn't have been as cognizant to think about how important that is, not just for me, but for the hundreds of people we ended up hiring and building that great team of people. I mean, that makes a huge difference.